Whoa. How about that? Let's get the virtual background in there. You know, it's really weird with this computer. Look at Jasper's blinking in and out. Go to green screen. There we go. We're back. What's going on, everybody? Robert Phoenix here. And thanks for being here. We're obviously running a little late tonight because I had to do a webinar with Lindsay from Strange Way. Yeah, Lindsay Sharman. One bright day, I did this webinar with her. She's great. And she had, I think, like 3 other people that were part of her webinar. And I think I came on last. I was last to be a part of it. We talked about Chiron and really got into it. It was a lot of fun. So then I had to prepare for the show. So anyway, I'm here, you're here, we're here, Jasper's here, and it is Sunday Night AstroLive, and we're going to do our very best to decode the high, strange, and the mundane, and a lot of the hot topics of the day. So tonight's show is titled Red Heifers, September 24th in Prince William's chart. So we're going to try our best to get in and dive into that stuff because it's pretty interesting. And there's a lot of heat around September 24th. It's got people feeling unsettled. And, you know, it seems like every year, right around September, October, as we approach the equinox, things can get like wonky, right? And especially in an election year where we have the midterms coming up, and October is usually the October surprise. Hey, it's like what they serve down at the hospital, dining, the hospital commissary. When I was a kid, I really wasn't a kid. I think it was around 23, and it was an interesting time in my life. My parents were having a house built, so we really didn't. They were trying to save money to get this house built. It was one of those. It was kind of a weird time, but it was a cool time. And it was my senior year in college, and so in order to save money while they're having this house built, it wasn't anything like extraordinary or big, but it was on the Pacific coast, and it was overlooking the ocean. It was a pretty modest house. I think it was a 2-2 with a garage. And it wasn't like, you know, they had a big family or anything, because I was getting ready to move out. But it was my senior year. So we wound up staying with my grandparents for a few months. And so I'd hang out with my grandfather. He wasn't my birth grandfather, but I'd hang out with him. And I love the guy. He was great. He was a Leo, just like the Lion King right here. He's not a Leo. Yeah. So we used to hang out. I liked him. He was the first person in my life that I could actually feel space around. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't a lot of static in the air around this guy. So I really dug hanging out with him. Plus he liked sports, and his son was queer. So he couldn't do like sports shit with his queer son. So he liked me because I like sports, and we went to like ball games. And so anyway, there's this period of time where my grandmother didn't cook. She was a shitty cook. I mean, she could cook when she wanted to. When she put her mind to it, she could cook pretty well. But most of the time she didn't cook. So my grandfather would have to fend for himself. And he would go down to the hospital. Like him and all his old buddies would go to the hospital and eat. And he would brag to me about how good the food was and how cheap. And I'd go down there, I'd hang out with him. It was pretty good, actually. I mean, it was, it was decent food. And then he'd introduce me to his, they're all dead now, all these people. But yeah, hospital food, the hospital commissary. Look at Jasper. Isn't he just gorgeous? Look at this guy. That's a handsome cat. He might be one of the most handsome cats on the internet. Just don't look at his teeth. So today I was I did this webinar with Lindsay. Rogueways. I'm sorry, Strange Ways. I had a Smith song in my head. Rogueways. And I had to find this PDF because it was on Chiron. I did a whole thing on Chiron. So I went through these computers, total Mercury retrograde thing. And then I found the hit ditty from 2019, which was Jasper, the astrological cat. I found that hit ditty. I'll play that next week. I'll play the hit ditty next week on the Sunday night show on the 24th, because we'll be here for that, right? So the 22nd is Thursday, 23rd, Saturday, 24th is Saturday, 25th is Sunday. So provided we're all still in this timeline and the world isn't reduced to a pile of ash, we'll be here. And I will play you the Jasper hit ditty from 2022, backed by popular demand. Jasper, the astrological cat. He knows where it's at. Had a good weekend. Me and the doctor went down to Rockport. I liked it. I liked Rockport. It was green. Rockport is a southern part of Texas, but down by the Gulf of Mexico. It's very green, very lush. A lot of rain down there. In fact, it even rained while we were there. And Rockport is the jumping off point for hummingbirds that are going to Mexico. It's like the last point. And I've got into hummingbird. I started to get into the hummingbird feeder thing when I moved to Fredericksburg, and I have one outside of my apartment. When I first moved to Fredericksburg, I think now I have 3 feeders, and they're really active. And I get a pretty good swarm of my feeders, and they're the ruby-throated hummingbird. So they all wind up down in Rockport, and that's where they get all juiced up and fat, so they can make their journey to Mexico. It was a cool scene. So we went on this hummingbird tour, and there's a woman whose job is to ban the hummingbirds. That's what she does. She doesn't get paid for it. It's a labor of love. So she takes these hummingbirds. Her husband catches the hummingbirds. He's got a feed. There's a system to catch them. He puts them in a little mesh baggie, a little mesh pouch, and brings them to his wife, right? They're older. They've got this thing down. And then she demonstrated how she bans these hummingbirds, and she puts these little bands on their feet, on their legs. But there's no signal, no RFID thing like emanating from the band. There is a number on it. And eventually they will find some of these hummingbirds, and they'll kind of figure out, where they went, what happened to them. And that's her job. And so these bands come from a very specific place, right? Like you don't get the bands at Walmart. You have to be a registered bander, and you have to account for all your bands. Like if only the government could be this fucking efficient. So they send her the bands, and she has to account for the bands, and she has to fill out this little paperwork. And there's a thing that she does by looking at the beaks that she can figure out whether they're male or female, how old they are, by the amount of sort of that's what I'm looking for, like variegation on their beaks. Like if there's a lot of variegation, they're pretty young. Like the older they get, the smoother the beaks get. Ridges, like ruffling ridges, tiny little waves across their beaks. And then she does this thing where she takes a straw and she blows on the bottom of them to check their fat content, because they need to have a certain amount of fat before they can make this epic journey across the Gulf of Mexico to Mexico, where they hang out and they have their baby hummingbirds. Then they start their migratory path back to the United States. And they get hummingbirds as, they get them from as far east as Pennsylvania, Ohio. So the hummingbirds have to travel to Rockport every year. And it's amazing how, they get there. So I asked her, I said, so how do the hummingbirds know how to get from wherever they are, which is, thousands of miles away? If you map it out, probably about 1,500, 2,000 miles to about 1,500 miles to like Pennsylvania, Ohio. And she said, well, first of all, it's genetic. So they have it inside of them, obviously. So, but I think they follow the stars. And this is not a woman who seems very airy-fairy at all. So I think they follow the stars and magnetic lines in the earth, and they know how to get here. Like, wow, that's really interesting. So at some point, I got to do kind of a deeper dive on the migratory patterns of hummingbirds as it relates to stars. I think it'd be really interesting. And it's so cool to, be connected to the natural world in that way, and to understand that, these other species that we share this planet with have these ancient migratory paths, and they use very sophisticated technologies that we may not understand from our vantage point. And not only that, but it was really interesting, like the amount of people that came, because there's this hummingbird festival. That's what it was. It was a hummingbird festival. And there are a lot of people who were like super, super into hummingbirds. Like, it's a thing. It's a real thing. And our bus, we went on this tour. So we went to the banding house and these two other houses. And our bus was packed. There was not an empty seat on the bus. And people came from all over the country to, witness this massive migration of hummingbirds. And the second house we went to had like 30 feeders, and they were all over the place. It was really, really cool. And then we took a little cruise out onto the Gulf and looked at seabirds, and we encountered some dolphins. And that's always a treat to see some dolphins out there's a whole world out there. There's a whole world out there that exists and lives independent of the drama that, we're being force-fed and indoctrinated into in our life. And they've been doing what they've been doing for thousands of years in terms of their, and before the hummingbird feeders, there were flowers and bugs, and, they'd have to stock up on these flowers and bugs. But then they formed a bond and a relationship with humans, and humans were there to help, increase the hummingbird population by providing these fierce. Hummingbirds are fierce too. Like, if you ever see them get into a turf war around a feeder, like, they're not an eagle or anything, but man, they're really super territorial when it comes to their water. So it's really interesting, this synergy that we have with other life forms on our planet, and it's never really talked about. In fact, tonight we're going to touch on something that is a weird synergy and a dark synergy, and it is connected to prophecy. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And what else? Is there anything else? Should we talk about some football? You want to talk football? I know how everybody loves it when I talk about football. I do want to talk about some football, though. Tom Brady looks like a fucking wraith. Robin sent me a picture of Tom Brady. I can't. It's like, whoa, dude. I got to send this to myself so I can put this up here. This is I'm gonna send this to myself. I'm gonna bring this up here. This is what happens when you don't listen to the luminaries. Tom Brady had a Saturn opposition. When Tom Brady left New England and he went to Tampa, what did they do? They won the Super Bowl. And that was just prior to Tom Brady's 44th year. And I talked about this 2 weeks ago. And when you are at the age of 44, you have to go through the Saturn opposition. and again, without beating a dead bull, it happens 3 times in your life. It happens at 14, 44, and 74. And each one of those cycles is really important. At 14, you separate out from your parents, your culture, you find your own music, your own style, your own clothes, right? It's separated away from where Saturn was. It's a 180. Like, I'm gonna do my own thing, motherfucker. And then you for better or worse, right? It also relates to the development of your endocrine system and your hormones and all that stuff, right? Right, Jasper? You're way past that Saturn opposition. Jasper is a Jupiterian cat. He's a Jupiterian cat, aren't you? You're no Saturn cat. Well, he did lose some teeth. I think that's a Chiron thing for Jasper. Anyway, he didn't do it. He had the opportunity. He had the golden ring. He had the golden ring on the merry-go-round, the wheel of life, clips the ring, throws it into the clown's mouth, and the calliope resounds with the ringing of bells. Yes, that was the ring moment. That was Tom Brady's Gotterdammerung, right? And what did he do? Yeah, I'll go back again. And she said, only one more year. One more year. So what happens to Tom? He gets to the playoffs, loses to, I think it was the Rams, who then go on to beat the 49ers, who then go on to win the Super Bowl. And what do we have? We have the Ram, which has reached the top of the mountain. There is no GOAT except for Tom Brady in the NFL, so we suffice to lean on the Ram as a representative. But the Ram reaches the top of the mountain, the pinnacle, the peak, the Lombardi Trophy in the City of Angels, right? The City of Angels, Aries, the Ram. We have war. We have war in where? Ukraine, not long after that. Look, have you checked out the Rams colors? They're the same colors as Ukraine. Interesting how things happen in sports. Let me show you a picture of Tom Brady here. And then I'm going to jump in and I'll jump in with chat. I'll check in with you guys and then we'll come back and do some more of the beloved football shit. Because I do want to talk about Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo, which is the Pluto Scorpio of the Scorpio Taurus axis. And we'll talk about that. All right. But first, let's look at the wraith known as Tom Brady. What the hell is going on here? See, this is what happens when you don't walk away from the table. Look at this. Look at this. He almost looks like a rendition of the skull behind him. See that? He looks like Skeletor. TB12 is his system. Now, Tom did not want to go back to the Buccaneers. Now, what did Tom want to do? Tom wanted to go play for the Miami Dolphins and become part owner. And that would have been something different, right? At 44. That would have been something different. But instead, Brian Flores, the Pisces, takes a dump on that parade, outs Tom Brady. And then what happens to Mr. Brady? He says, well, I'm going to retire. You should have stayed retired. You should have stayed retired. Bruce Arians winds up retiring. He retired. Bruce Arians retired. And Todd Bowles became the head coach. Brady comes out of retirement because maybe he didn't really like Bruce Arians enough. He wanted to be like Peyton Manning, call his own plays on the field. And in the meantime, his buddy Rob Gronkowski winds up retiring, and then Gisele Bundchen leaves him. And this is what happens. This is what happens when you are stressed out to the max. He's a he's got Libra rising, so he needs the other, right? He needs the other. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, let's see, Neptune, Sag. So he's a Libra rising. I have his chart. I'm not going to get back into it. Sun Saturn conjunction in Leo, so that's part of his longevity, the Sun Saturn. But this is the look of a guy who is wasting away. He's emaciated. He's like, this is not how he looked. This is not what Tom, and who knows? Maybe he's been replaced. I don't know. But if he's still the Tom Brady from California that went to Sarah High, this guy is not digging life. He is not. I don't even know if they won or lost today. I wasn't really paying attention to that game. So Tom Brady should have gotten off the wheel. He should have gotten off the wheel with the Saturn opposition. He didn't do it. Not do it. Ain't happening. His Capricorn rising wife, on the other hand, is laying down the law. And that is not a happy camper. Not a happy camper. So we're going to get some of the football stuff out of the way. I do want to talk about Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance because it's interesting from an astrological perspective. Let's see, who do we have here today? LMM, are you okay, Janaville? We have a little issue here. Is Jan okay? WC Ray is here. Joan S is here. Fran is here. Meow meow. Meow meow saying hi to you, Jasper. Meow meow saying hi to you. Who else do we have? Cheryl Lociavo. What's going on with Jana? Hi, Cheryl. We'll see you soon. There's my man, Tom. Thanks for being patient today. Carrie McQuaid, hospital pudding can be fantastic. I had good meals there. I enjoyed hanging out with my Gramps. Here's Amy Cheeky Monkey in the state. JMP Love, check it in. There she is. Dawn. Hi, Dawn. Is that Dawn Renee or is that Dawn? Is that Delta Dawn? Love a Scorpio. Love Scorpio's here. Jennifer Clark. Hi, Jennifer. Speaking of Scorpio, there's Shadow. Shadow checking in on the Thursday show last week, doing a stalwart job of tuning us into the railroad strike. Thanks for doing that. Jan Schiavino. Hi, Jan. Welcome to the show. JJ. JJ is living on the edge. Should be living on the edge in Chi-Town, the Windy City. Now there's Dawn. We got two Dawns here. It's a double Dawn. Lady Virgo. What's going on? Lady Virgo. Mickey King is here. Hi, Mickey. Good to see you, as always. There she is, the one and only LA Bliss, who is going to be singing some yacht come October. Yachttober. We'll be rocking Yachttober in the Hill Country. There's Janaville. Oh, boy. Stage 4 cancer. Oh, no. Man, okay. All right. Some prayers go out to Jana there. We got a good crew here, Jana. By the way, Jana, if you don't have a Rife machine and you can afford one, I highly, highly recommend it. In fact, if anybody can afford the Rife UVX, which I do think is superior to the Spooky 2, don't hesitate. Get one. There's Bad Chad. Chad Warren is here. My great aunt Aline made the best slow cooked green beans, so rich with ham flavor. You know what's interesting, Chad? My grandmother was known for her beans as well. It wasn't green beans, but she did the Great Northern White Bean. That was her thing. The Great Northern White Bean with bacon, ham hock. Who else do we have? Jasper has a new hairdo. I want to, I was online. I was looking to see if I could get Jasper a one of those lion collars. But all these lion collars have these stupid fucking ears in them. And Jasper's ears are just fine. He doesn't need one. Steve Letro, we arrived in Buffalo, New York today after stopping in Altoona, Pennsylvania to drive Eastern Shore. Marin was good. The country looks green and bountiful. Good. Did you see the Northern Lights at all? I've seen the Northern Lights. I saw the Northern Lights one time in northern Pennsylvania. It's the only time I ever saw the Northern Lights. It came down that far. It was really cool. What is in Rockport? Hummingbirds. Hummingbirds are in Rockport. Dolphins are in Rockport. Egrets are in Rockport. The painted, was it? I always forget the name of this thing. Snout bill, or it's just, it's like it looks like a duck. It's got this bill. It's long and wide. It's and then it's pink. That's in Rockport. I had this fantasy boating the intracoastal highway or the intracoastal waterway. So I watched a bunch of videos about that last night. Let's see. Lady Virgo, hi there. Thank you, Lady Virgo. I appreciate that. From one Virgo to another. I appreciate that. Let's see, what else do we have? Have a friend that takes pics of hummingbirds. They'd be quite hummingbirds can, yeah, man. Like in the hummingbird world, they don't play. Like they're very territorial about their sugar water. We think of hummingbirds as being all, sweet little hummingbird. No. We saw a video one time where this one hummingbird fucking pierced this other hummingbird with its beak, like right through it. It's like playing for keeps. Helen's here. What's going on, Helen? Good to see you. Welcome. Who else do we have? Veronica Braley. Veronica, usually I post these things. I've been posting them on Facebook now. Tonight is not one of those nights because I was backed up. I try to multitask the best of my ability. Let's see. True astrology. Hi, True. What's happening there? Helen says, I have an orange kitty. Most are males, but mine is a female name. That's pretty rare. You got an orange female. That's pretty rare. Pat the cat. She's got Pat the cat. Jasper, look at you. I could just do a whole show on ASMR with Jasper. I just put the mic up to his purr machine. Wouldn't that be healing? Oh, you're feisty man, aren't you? Look, he's feisty. He's feisty. Look at him. Look at him. Look at him. No teeth. No teeth. He wouldn't last a day. You wouldn't last a day in the real world without me. You'd have to team up with Max. You have to tag team with Max. Sonia K. Hey, nice to see you, Sonia. Always a pleasure here. Liz Atwell in the house. Bringing the thunder from down under. That's Liz Atwell. Yeah, electromagnetics. I think so. Yeah, normally, Veronica, I'm kind of on it, but I just finished a webinar. So and then I had to prepare for the show. So I went from one thing to the next. Let's see who else we have. LMM, I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak my mind and for the opportunity for everybody to speak their minds in a time where that is becoming a pretty rare commodity. It's a currency in and of itself. So thank you. Oh, yeah. The heartbeats, man. The doctor said you can feel their heartbeat. It's like, it's really cool. Let's see. Who else do we have? Hummingbirds they're so cool, man. I've always dug them. I like birds in general. I dig birds, especially birds of prey. But not for you. You don't need a bird of prey. No way. No way. Look at him. He's like he's on drugs. Did you take some drugs before the show? Did you take some drugs? Did you get into the nip? Look at him. He looks all drugged out. You look totally drugged out. All right. Let's see. Who else do we have? Did I miss? Ivan, what's going on? No, Ivan, you're fine. The Changs, Dave and Nicole from the Great White North, bringing some of their magic to the chat. That's cool to see you guys. It's great to have Ivan back. Hate sports ball. I know. It sucks. You know what I like about sports, though? It gives us real-time metrics in a lot of ways. With like Mercury retrograde, you'll see it in sports all the fucking time. Sports is one of those things from a mundane perspective, gives us real-time metrics. No football. Yeah, you got to get into a little, you see there's bigger issues though. There's bigger issues here. When you get into Trey Lance and Jimmy Garoppolo, you get into the bull, Trey Lance, Garoppolo, the Scorpio. And this is really, again, from an astrological perspective, just hang with me for a minute. The 49ers have been through this before. This goes back to Colin Kaepernick and Alex Smith. And Colin Kaepernick with the Scorpio, and Alex Smith is a Taurus, right? So now they have another Taurus and they have another Scorpio engaged in this weird kind of quarterback polarity. But it's very, very different now because the youth, which is basically anybody from 35 and under, roughly, are just full in on Trey Lance. They're full in. And now it's all a conspiracy. People hate Trey Lance because, well, he's black. He's actually mixed, but we'll call him black just for the sake of labeling somebody. So if you don't like Trey Lance, you're a racist. You're racist or you're old. So now there's the racist thing, and then there's the old thing. And so when you get into Taurus and Scorpio, what do you get into? You get into extremes, right? These are fixed signs. And there's like, it's polarity. And I've seen this thing with Trey Lance going on now. And he seems like a nice guy. I have no beef against Trey Lance, although it did come out last week that I think it was Monday or Tuesday. He went he was at a strip. Wasn't even at a strip club, it was a house. And he was making it rain. Right. And everybody made a lot of jokes about it. Oh, look, he's into the redistribution of wealth and ha, 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 very, very funny. Right. And then this week he breaks his ankle. And what do we have? He's got all these planets in Taurus. He's got a quarterback on the other side who's sitting there, who's a Scorpio, right? And we're Saturn. It's an Aquarius, splitting the two right down the center. What does the ankle represent? Or what sign represents the ankle? It's Aquarius. So he suffers an Aquarian injury. So we have a fixed T-square. So that's, I mean, when you look at these things, you can see them in real time. That's why I talk about them. You may hate football, but from an astrological perspective, you can see it play out. And Trey Lance, I think, has like 4 planets in Taurus. He's super Taurus. And he broke his ankle. Aquarius. Who comes in? The Scorpio. What do we have? Polarization. Total polarization. And then you have an entire fan base who is now blaming the coach and saying the coach was in on some kind of conspiracy to injure his star player. This is where we are, by the way. This is where we are with our culture. That Kyle Shanahan, who is the coach of the 49ers, conspired to get his own quarterback hurt because he didn't want to play him. This is where we are. And there are people who are adamant about this. Like, this is the fucking hill they're going to die on. They're not going to die on, the World Economic Forum. They're not going to die on anything. They wouldn't die on you know, the jib jab, the hijab, right? They weren't going to die on any of that stuff, but they're going to die on this hill with Kyle Shanahan, the Sagittarius, conspire to ruin Trey Lance. It makes no fucking sense, but it tells you where we are in the world right now. That they are convinced that his coach went out of his way to get him injured. Who the fuck thinks that? It's a culture that has been raised on what? Victimhood and finding somebody to blame, looking for the scapegoat. Right? And we're Neptune and Pisces, and boy, we're all looking for scapegoats now. It's scapegoat season with Neptune and Pisces. Has been for a while. Trump was the scapegoat, right? Just, you know, it's pin the tail on the scapegoat. What are you doing, Jasper? Oh, don't look. Don't look. That's obscene. Jasper. No, I'm just messing around. So this, to me, it's like, it's not just football. You get to see the distillation of the opposition and the fixed opposition. It's nuts. It's totally nuts. Like the coach is going to go out of his way to design plays to hurt his own player, who they spent 3 draft picks on to draft. And his backup, Mr. Scorpio, Jimmy Garoppolo, now can take over the team. Maybe he does incredibly well. He's on a 1-year contract, and he may parlay this into a huge deal for another team. Another team might go, wow, this guy led them to another, you know, division title. Who knows? Who knows what'll happen? Who knows what'll happen after September 24th, which we'll talk about. But let's just say it plays out, and he does. And Kyle Shanahan loses that player. Why the fuck would he do that? Why the fuck would he do that? It just makes and this is the world that we're living in now. There are things that people are invested in that make no sense. They can't get off of their, it's like, I'll tell you again, it goes back to football, but it takes right back to politics. Robert Reich, you know, the midget who was the Secretary of Treasury for Clinton. By the way, I was in the same cafe with Robert Reich one day. Oh my God. If you don't know who I'm talking about, I'll show you a picture of him. You guys are pretty smart. Okay, so here's Robert Reich. He's a Cancer. You know this guy. He looks like Jon Stewart's like midget uncle. This guy. Look at him. See, this is the disparity of height here. There he is. See what I'm talking about? That is not a doctored photo, by the way. Here he is again. Here's Obama. He looks up to Obama. So I was in here he is with the Clintons. I think he's on a taller chair here. Back in the good old days. She doesn't look too happy to be in there, does she? So I was in a cafe one time across from UC Berkeley, and he was in there. He's a professor there. He was in there with some of his friends. What a miserable fucking bunch they were. They were miserable. Sat around, drank their coffee, drank their tea. They all looked kind of shriveled up, and I talked a little bit, and it was just weird. It was weird. It's like, why don't you have some fucking fun in life? Because we said, oh, look, that's Robert Reich. Very, hushed tones. Very important things were being said there. A lot of head nodding going on. He said that Brett Favre's in trouble. Libra Brett Favre, bring it back to astrology. Brett Favre got into some money there with the government in Mississippi. and used it for some of his pet projects. And Mr. Reich said that Colin Kaepernick, who did far less, and was banned from football. He's trying to compare Kaepernick with Brett Favre. Kaepernick being a Scorpio, of course. And yeah, it's like apples and oranges. Colin Kaepernick just wound up not being that good. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Oh, and by the way, while you're criticizing Brett Favre for taking money that didn't belong to him, maybe you should talk about what the Clintons did with the Rose Law Firm and how they funded Don Tyson, who then started Tyson Chicken, how they funded the airplane manufacturing company that Webster Hubbell's father ran, where they reconditioned the hulls of planes so that they can fit a ton of stuff in those holes. And then that they would fly out of Mena, Arkansas with arms, fly them down to Central America and bring back that white powder, the snow from Panama, right? That's what they were doing. That's how it all started. It started with the Clintons and the Rose Law Firm. You can read all about it. It's all out there. They made a movie about it, starring Tom Cruise. They take a little bit of license with it. But does Robert Reich talk about? No, he'd rather talk about Colin Kaepernick, the Scorpio. All right, so that's enough football. Let's get into some astrology. I know you guys are just itching to get into some astrology. Let's look at the chart of the moment. Now I got a bunch of charts all set up, ready to go. Oh, before I do that though, I have to give a nod to our sponsor, because usually on the Sunday night show, I get into the show and I forget about Chris, and I don't want to do that. So let's get into some true ham science here, and then it's just balls to the wall astrology until we get to the end of the show. Right, Jasper? Oh, he's all mellowed out now. Okay. So let's go into Chris's very, very relaxing website. Why don't you guys just hang out in that primordial bliss for a minute while I look for a little reference point. Just hang out there. Just take it all in. Ah, yes. So good. Because there's something I want to talk about. Yeah. Okay. So my buddy Christopher Lynch started True Ham Science. I don't know, maybe I started to get his products back around 2018, I think, 2018. 2018 is when I moved to Fredericksburg, and I remember him sending me some goodies. I'm like, wow, is this stuff good or what? And he sent me this, one of these straws that had CBD with high terpenes in it. And man, it just took the edge right off of things. And I thought, wow, this guy's really doing some interesting stuff. He also had, at that time, his version of MMS, a few other things. And he's just been continuing to grow and build the business. So the gummies, they're the big hit. And I know people who do daytime gummy. They like it. I've had a daytime gummy. I thought it was fine. But they also work quite well at night, about half an hour before you go to bed. And let me show you the gummies here. The old edibles. So these are the full spectrum gummies, black cherry. They're really good. Chris just came out with some moon dust, CBGA, which has kind of the opposite effect. And it's enervating and a little bit stimulating, lends some focus and some clarity. And the gummies just take you into a much smoother flight pattern. So there's a bunch of different products that you can get here. on True Hem Science. And if you spend $100 or more, you will get some free product thrown in. And Chris is really generous with that. And you can use the word or the code 15 mins. That's 15 MINS, 15 mins. Put it in the checkout. And True Hem Science /ref/23. Spend $150 or more and you can get free shipping. And let me show you what we're working on here. This is so cool. We've been talking about this and started to kind of plan this last week. And this is going to be an exclusive Chattaria blend of CBD. And it will be a unique product in that it will be different from his soluble products, which are going to be the liquid-based CBD, or the gummies, which are chewy. These will be like capsules. And you'll be able to get them in a small box with the Chattaria logo right on top of it. So Chris is going to do a limited run of these. And of course, if you're here and you watch the show or you watch the 15 Minutes of Flame show, Tuesday through Thursday, just for the box alone. And we might even turn this into a t-shirt. I know, it's so cool. Lady Artemis put that together, and looking forward to that. So there you go. That's our sponsor. Give him a nod. Christopher Lynch, my buddy. Okay, let's look at the chart at the moment. Let's see where we are in space. And then we're going to get into these charts. I feel like we need to get our bearings, because it feels like we're spinning right off the axis, if you believe in that sort of thing. Let me just change this. Not that it really matters all that much, but we'll do it anyway. All right. Here we go. So we're going to look at the chart of the moment and kind of where the astrology and the energy is right now. I guess I talked to David briefly today, and apparently he's in some kind of like championship deal for jet skis, like the national championships. I got to find out how he did after the show. So the Leo King playing Prometheus. No, not Prometheus. What's he playing? He already did that one. Poseidon. The Leo King is playing Poseidon. Here we go. All right, that's the chart of the moment. The ascendant here is 22 Aries. So we've got about 8 degrees before it shifts into Taurus. And we can go into a more mellow, laid back Taurus space. But in the meantime, we'll be creeping up on the edge and delving into hot topics with that Aries ascendant. The sun at 26 Virgo. You know whose birthday it is tomorrow? Nile Rodgers. Nile Rodgers, born 19th of September. I might have a look at this chart before the night's over. Nile Rodgers is fucking amazing. That guy sold 500 million records. 500 million records, either as an arranger, a musician, a songwriter, a producer, sometimes all of the above. 500. Who sells 500 million records? 75 million CDs, and he's cool to boot. I dig Nile Rodgers. We'll take a look at this chart later. So here we go. We're winding down on Virgo. It seems like we just got here. And by the time Friday rolls around, we'll be out of here. And we'll be at 0 Libra on Friday. I think the equinox this year, if I'm not mistaken, is on Saturday, the 24th, which we're going to get into. We're definitely going to get into that. So hang in there. We'll look at the 24th chart, and I've got some other pieces I'm going to try to fit together here. So tomorrow, when you wake into the next version of Dark City, the moon will be in Cancer because that's where it is right now. So we're starting the week off Moon Day, Monday, with a Cancer moon, and it is getting ready to essentially go dark here and become balsamic. When it moves into Leo, which will be on, let's see, Monday, Tuesday. On Tuesday, the moon moves into that balsamic phase. And that's when things begin to go dark, right? They begin to shut down. There's no energy left in the moon. So in Leo, that's tricky because in Leo, we're looking for, the pulse, literally the pulse, passion, the heart. And as the moon goes dark into the balsamic phase, it's a weak pulse. And then we're going to go into that moon-Saturn opposition as the moon goes balsamic, which I don't think is necessarily great. And, are we looking at lights out? I keep thinking about 1977. And 1977 was when Chiron was discovered. It was discovered in October. But prior to that, it was at 3 degrees Taurus. But prior to that, in 1977, they had the blackout in New York City. And I'm like, that was in July, by the way. And I'm like, at some point, we're gonna relive that New York City blackout. And when and if it happens, and it will happen, it's not going to be pretty. It will not be pretty. Because the world, even though they ruined businesses and lives in 1977, there were shopkeepers that never came back. And these were shopkeepers that had sporting goods stores and music stores, stores that serviced areas that weren't serviceable. Like in certain areas in New York, Bronx, they didn't have fucking malls. They didn't have malls. You went to a store. You went to a sporting goods store that had been there for 25 or 30 years, 40 years. If it was in the 70s, 30 years, takes you back to the 1940s. Those places were there. They were family-owned businesses, and they got looted, they got ransacked, and they never returned. Never. And of course, on the heels of that, you have Rudy Giuliani coming in and implementing the broken windows program. And that's when corporate America decided we're going to go to New York. It was dangerous. It was dirty. It was dank. It was depraved. It was decadent. And guess what? We're going to go in. And so they prettied up 42nd Street and they prettied up Times Square, which for all intents and purposes was, it was pretty sleazy. And they turned it in to Disney, and they turned it into Virgin Records, and they turned it into Starbucks, and they turned it into McDonald's. It was like and a lot of this was presaged by the burning, right? Like New York went through a reset when they had the blackout. It was a reset. It's like, okay, well, that's over, done with. These stores are gone. A lot of these family businesses are gone. Some of them never came back. Corporations moved in. That's exactly what happened. So here we have this dark moon coming in this week and opposing Saturn as a run up to September 24th. September 24th is the beginning of Rosh Hashana, which we're going to get into, especially as it relates to the red heifers. If you know what the red heifers are about, there's a prophecy about having 4 red heifers with not one hair on them that is discolored. They must all be pure and red. They've all been delivered to Israel. I'm going to get into that. And that's where we get into the bull behind us. So we're in the year of, really, it's not the year of the bull, it's the year of the tiger, the fire tiger, if I'm not mistaken, right? But Taurus looms large. True node in Taurus, Uranus in Taurus. And we went through a big Mars phase in Taurus. So the bull looms large, and we're going to talk about that. And the red heifers being a representation of the bull. We have the bull on Wall Street. We'll talk about Wall Street too. We'll bring Prince William in here as part of the discussion at some point. So as we approach this very interesting moment coming up on September 24th, we'll look at the chart for September 24th. This dark moon moves into place. And that's going to be, let's get an exact day on that because that's important. I am a Virgo. Let me just go the extra Virgo mile to make it as exact as possible. All right. So what do we got? What do we got? All right. So let's see. Yep. The 21st, the moon moves into Leo. And on the 22nd, according to my ephemeris, the moon, which is Thursday, the moon moves into Leo, and guess what it does? It opposes Saturn. That's on Thursday, the 22nd. The 29th degree of Virgo. This year, though, it is the 28th degree of Virgo. Normally it's the 29th. I should know because I'm born on that day. But this year, the anaretic degree is on Friday, the 23rd. So I get to have 2 birthdays this year, Thursday and Friday. I'm going to rock that. In fact, it's already planned out. It's already happening. So we're looking at this moon-Saturn opposition on the 22nd, this dark moon. And Saturn is at 1926 Aquarius. Very interesting. So it's a dark moon, a balsamic moon, obviously, opposing Saturn, and it's right before the autumnal equinox. This is going to be the last balsamic moon as we move into the fall season here. This is just the last balsamic moon of the summer. Right from spring, Aries season to Libra season, this is the last balsamic moon, and it's happening right here on the eve of the this strange day where the sun will be at on the 24th. Starts at 0 Libra, eventually migrates into 1, and then we have a strange appellation of planets, which we're going to look at. So, what does that mean for this dark moon? That means is that there's no pulse. That's what it means. Let me get back to the chart. There's no pulse. Nothing's beating here. When the Saturn moon opposition also occurs in astrology, in the personal chart, it's usually a sign of divorce between the mother and the father. And I've seen this in many, many charts. If you have a Saturn moon opposition, there's a good chance you have parents that have either divorced, or if they're together, they're very, very distant towards one another, because we're talking about the paternal principle with Saturn and the maternal principle with the moon. And so this is also an aspect of divorce. And there's no energy left in the moon at this point. And it's a dark moon. So is this a prime candidate for a blackout moon? Maybe. Wouldn't that just be shits and giggles as we head into the 24th of September? Total shits and giggles. So today with the moon in Cancer, we're talking about nurturing, care, early degrees of Cancer. We've got a T-square going on with Mercury retrograding in Libra. I had some Mercury retrograde moments too, just besides the fact that we got the Jasper ditty, the hit ditty that we'll play next week. I actually had a Mercury retrograde moment with my new car. It's not a new car, it's a used car. And I'm learning the ins and outs of it, and fucking, I left it on for not but 20 seconds and the battery ran dead. So I had to call. I didn't have a charger with me. I called AAA, and I think I'm on the blacklist of the AAA here in the Hill Country, because Fat Boys Towing is the AAA people here in the Hill Country. They never come for me anymore. I think I chewed them out one too many times. And they're just like, fuck this guy. I'm like Sean Penn in U-Turn. Fuck him. We're not going to pick him up. But I also think it's part of the business strategy now. It's like, we're just not going to go. Yeah, I know we're AAA authorized. We're just not going to go. I don't know what their fiduciary relationship with AAA is, how they get paid. Do they get paid by the toe? Do they get paid by, who knows? I don't know. But it seems like that's the new business model. So I went through that Mercury, and they never came. Never came. Luckily, Lady Artemis and Bubba showed up, and I got a jump. So don't be afraid of Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde isn't always bad. There's so much hype around Mercury retrograde. Don't worry about it. Like, use it as an opportunity to, reevaluate things. And in Libra, you're reevaluating what your contracts are and what you've signed up for, or who you've signed up for that thing with. So don't be afraid. Be afraid of examining that. Jupiter's in opposition with Mercury this week, starting off on Monday. And so we're looking at opportunities, right? Jupiter's retro. A lot of planets are retrograde. I know, right? Are you looking at opportunities? Yeah, you are. You are. You were going to ditch me for David's show, weren't you? You're like, he's the Leo king. He's like a lion. He was going to ditch me for David's show. He thought it'd be a better gig, right? You thought it'd be a better gig, didn't you? Go back to California. He changed his mind now. But that's where we are with Mercury retrograde, Jupiter retrograde. You have to figure out what's real, what's on the plate. What's on the plate? Because Jupiter always makes things bigger, more enticing. And the retrograde is, well, you may want to reconsider that. And we're dealing with cardinal signs. And in the cardinal signs, what do? We initiate. So are you going back on things that you already began to initiate with? And then sometimes you can do that. I mean, sometimes we have to negotiate. Libra is negotiating. Today was really funny. I had a little Mercury retrograde moment. I sold my old car, and this woman came. It was a cool thing. She came by this week, and she liked it. And she gave me a down payment for it, like a deposit. I was like, she gave me half. I'm like, cool. It was old school. And I wrote her out a little thing, notepad. And she took a photo of it, put it on her phone. She came back today, picked it up, and she saw one of my other cars. I have a 2001 Nissan truck that I'm going to sell as well. Trying to downsize here a little bit. You know what I mean? And she saw that. So what do you plan on doing with that? I said, well, I'm going to sell it. Oh, I wish you would have told me earlier. I'm like, yeah, if I told you earlier, you wouldn't have bought this other car. Trust me, this other car is better for you. It's way more comfortable. You're going to enjoy it. You're going to drive down the road. You're going to feel like a queen, a woman king driving that car. But that's a Mercury retrograde, Jupiter retrograde moments. I wish you would have told me. That's where we are. And, it's okay. You don't want to get lost or drown in any kind of regret over some decision you made. But this is one of those times where it's like, yeah, well, maybe I should reconsider something. But reconsider what you're reconsidering with the Jupiter retrograde. Generally, it's not best to make decisions on Mercury retrograde. Generally, it's not, But if you're, it's not always the end of the world either. If this woman who bought my car, she started the process on Wednesday. I think Mercury was already retrograde by then. And no, she started on Thursday. It was already retrograde. But if you're looking at it for kind of revamping, and like she has a small car and she has rescue animals. So she wanted a bigger vehicle. Well, here you go. Right. So she reimagined like what she could do with a bigger vehicle versus what she couldn't do with a smaller vehicle. To me, that's a Mercury retrograde moment. It's like, okay. And the Jupiter opposition is she got bigger. I sold her a big car, a big, comfortable car. So sometimes Mercury retrograde, you don't always want to sign deals. There's no real deal signed. But there are times where you can make decisions. I'm like, I don't believe in the whole be paralyzed for 3.5 fucking weeks. I don't believe in that. You have to make decisions sometimes. You can't just wait it out. You can't. Sometimes you can. If you can, it's better sometimes. But sometimes you can't. Sometimes you got to make a decision. And I've seen decisions made on Mercury retrograde that have worked out okay. I've also seen some other decisions on Mercury retrograde that haven't worked out so well. But I'd say by and large, don't be afraid of Mercury retrograde. It's taken on, this kind of larger than life specter. And it's like, chill out, right? Just chill. It gives you an opportunity to reevaluate and reassess and sometimes even retrench, regroup, just throw in the re's there with retrograde. That's what it does. She decided her car wasn't big enough. Wanted a bigger car. She reevaluated. That's what happened. So don't be afraid of Mercury retrograde. 4 degrees, pretty close in the opposition. But sometimes not all things are equal. And Jupiter will show you that, especially when you have Mercury retrograde in Libra. And I think, you always want to try to have both parties at the end of the day get something out of the deal. Like, that's really important. The end of the day, both parties want to get something out of the deal. That's how I've always operated. I've got Mercury in Libra, Venus in Libra, and Moon in Libra. So I try to be fair to the best of my ability. And unfortunately, the way the business has been set up in the West is that in business, you screw somebody. You screw them. And there's a winner and there's a loser. You screw them. So when I sold this car, there's always a little test of conscience. You know what I mean? There's always that little test of conscience. So I was very upfront about things. I was upfront about the dash, needed some help. It was in the description of the car. Like, I was up, oxidation on the hood. I was upfront about everything. And then we were driving down the road, and there's always that little test. And I'm like, should I tell her about the throttle body? I'm like, yeah, I should tell her about the throttle body. So the throttle body is this little thing that regulates the engine. And I think it has to do with aspiration. And it's also connected to the sensors. Like, the throttle body has a sensor. So if the sensor is going out in the throttle body, it needs to be replaced. Because what happens is all of a sudden it starts to cut the power down. It almost feels like you're shuddering going down the highway. So one of the things you do with the throttle body, what you do with that is you pull the car over, and you turn the engine off, and it resets it. It's real simple. You just have to wait 30 seconds, turn it back up, you're on. So I'm thinking, it's not that big a deal. Should I tell her about the throttle body? I had that little conversation, right? Don't tell her about the throttle body. It's okay. You told her about everything else. Tell her about the throttle body. You have to disclose everything. Don't worry about it. She'll figure it out. No, tell her about the throttle body. So I did. I told her about the throttle body. And she was like, I said, but here's the deal. I price them out. They're about $250. If you know somebody who can just swap it out, it's easy. I was going to do it, but I just decided to sell the car. She said, okay. So she called her brother, who's a mechanic. She told him about the throttle body. She's like, no problem. He can replace it. Boom, done. Sale, finished, right? There's your Mercury retrograde. At that point, it was probably at about maybe 6 or 7. And there's Jupiter over there. Yeah, come on. Who cares about the throttle body? And that's what happened. I told her. So I disclosed everything and I sold the car. And I got pretty much exactly what I wanted for it. And everybody got something out of it, right? To me, that's how this thing should work. And one of the reasons why the world is so fucked up is because somebody's got to get over on somebody else. This whole social Darwinism has crept into our lives and fucked everything up because it's created a planet of sociopaths. And sociopathy is a virus. And there's that line from the Dr. John song, if I don't do it, somebody else will. You know who else said that? George Soros. What if I didn't do it, somebody else would have done it? You know, and he turned his own people in to the Germans. If I did not do it, somebody else will, so why not me? Right? That's the mindset. And people who want to do good business and want to make sure that everybody gets something out of the deal, these are like lambs to the slaughter because you're swimming with sharks. The world is infested with fucking sharks. They told you on Sharknado week. Why did they bring that shit up every week? But I will say that if you hold to your principles, and by the way, I only had one person call me about that car. One. And it was the person that bought it. If you hold and she was cool too, right? It was like a vibe thing. And she was late. And I was like, oh man, I gotta get to a client. So I gotta be done by noon. And it was, I think, 11:40 at that point. And in her mind, this is what was going on in her mind. She told me, if he's still there when I come back, when I get there, I know it's meant to be. So this is the person that I was dealing with, right? Dealt with. And she said to me, so you seem pretty honest and fair, right? And for the most part, I am. I wasn't always honest and fair. I tried to be, but I wasn't always. So in this case, it worked out. And so I got this mirror reflection of this person, right? So you can live in the world with scruples and principles. You can do it. You don't have to succumb to the psychopathic virus. You get tested on it, but you don't have to succumb to it. And in fact, the better you get at it and the more clear you are on it, the better life works. Because that other world will eat you alive. It'll eat you alive. You won't have any soul left. So here we have the Mercury-Jupiter opposition, and this is, these are things to ponder. The sun has just crossed Neptune in the opposition. Oh, I know that Neptune-Sun opposition. Yes. It was a good opposition for you, wasn't it? I wasn't here. So you missed the hell out of me. This is what's happening. I was gone for a day. This is what happens. That Neptune-Sun opposition was good for you. You're back on the show too, right? Neptune-Sun opposition, the sun is moving away. It's always a critical opposition. I'm glad I spent yesterday on the water with a Neptune-Sun opposition. That actually worked. I didn't plan it out that way, but it actually worked. So when we go through the Neptune-Sun opposition, if you have a Neptune-Sun opposition in your chart, I mean, it's an interesting opposition. You can be very, very spiritual, very spiritual. You can also be kind of deluded and not really clear about what your path is at times. But other times you kind of stumble into opportunities. The challenge with the Neptune-Sun opposition is to develop faith, faith that you can move through life through the lens of Neptune. And sometimes your choices can be a bit faded with Neptune there. So we're moving away from it. You guys got out of it. So it's separating. Tomorrow, the sun will be at 27, still in opposition, but more rational, logical heads prevail, even though we're headed towards the 27th and 28th degree of Virgo. And in Virgo, those degrees get really nervous and really, here's the word, peripatetic. Bill Murray is born on the 21st of September. And if you want to see a 28 degree Virgo in action, watch Bill Murray. Watch Bill Murray and some of his videos in Carmel. That's 28 Virgo. It's all over the place because it's a mutable sign. And those 2 degrees are when things just start to get crazy. By the time you get to 29, I've talked about this before, there's nothing left. So we're in a kind of an interesting, weird period with the 27th and 28th degree of Virgo coming up. still separating from the opposition. We're going to get into that Sun-Jupiter opposition on the 24th, which we're going to talk about. Mars is just trucking straight ahead in Gemini. I got into some Mars Gemini shit on Twitter. I guess when was that, on Thursday? There was a little Mercury retrograde going on there too. So as we progress through the week, and especially as we get closer to the 24th, Mars is moving into square with Neptune. Right, that's a tricky square. Very tricky square. The Neptune just drains Mars. It empties Mars. There's no motivation. No motivation. And Mars in Gemini, it's a trickster. Gemini is a trickster. So we have trickster energy in abundance with Mars and Gemini, moving more in trine with Saturn. And as we see this Mars transit come through this week, it's aligning more with Saturn, squaring more with Neptune. So we have this breakdown with the Mars-Neptune square, and then aligning with structure, order, and authority. This Mars transit is a very interesting one. Now, everybody's waiting for the fucking shoe to drop. And I looked at the chart, and I got to tell you, it just might drop on Saturday. A lot of times I'm like, okay, let's pump the brakes. Let's pump the brakes. Let's pump the brakes. Cooler heads prevail. But the 24th, the shoe might drop. We'll get into that chart. And part of the story is this Mars square to Neptune and the Mars trine to Saturn. In your own life, Mars-Saturn trines can be good, especially if you're focused on working on something, building something, preparing something. I've got the event coming up. We're going to do an on-site tomorrow, and we're going to look at, what kind of magic we can create. So that'll be good. That's going to be a good application of a Mars-Saturn trine. Really good. This grand trine here, definitely in effect. So by the time we'll get into it, all these things are lining up to look a lot like the chart for Saturday. The week starts again with that moon in Cancer. It's a bit of a vulnerable moon. It's like, okay, Mercury retrograde. Here, I'll throw this out to you. If you have to apologize for something that you don't think you have to apologize for on Monday or Tuesday, don't worry about it. Just do it. It's okay. It's okay. Take the high road. Go ahead. Say you're sorry. I apologize. Don't worry about it. Because this Moon Mercury square, especially with Moon in Cancer, there's a lot of subjectivity and people are very touchy. Very, very touchy. So just, what do you mean by apologizing? What do you mean? I don't accept it. Fuck your apology. I want to stay angry and pissed off. Don't worry about it. Just go ahead and do it. It's like, let's do it. As I've gotten older, I got all these planets in Libra. I try to really pick my spots to apologize. There's a time to apologize. It's a really, it's making a, it's leaving something at the temple of Apollo. That's what apologize means. You're leaving a gift at the temple of Apollo. So you're asking Apollo for forgiveness. But it's okay. I'm trying to pick my spots more, because if you apologize all the time, it doesn't fucking mean anything. If you never apologize, well, it's just mean. So pick your spots this week. And if you have to be the bigger person, just go ahead and do it. Just go do it. It's okay. What else do we have? Emotions are kind of big right now, right? And even as the moon tomorrow begins to separate a bit more from Jupiter, big emotions. By the time we get out to late Tuesday, early Wednesday, Jupiter's making that trine to, the moon's making that trine to Neptune. And that to me feels a little bit like the calm before the storm. Take stock on Tuesday. Take stock of what you have too. Because we all know that Cancer has a lot to do with preparation and being able to be safe and secure. You may want to take stock of things on Tuesday. Make sure you have some candles. I think having some candles would be good. We get this dark moon going into a post-Saturn. It is the last balsamic moon of the spring-summer season here in the north. For you guys down below the equator, it's getting ready to flip into your spring, and it is the last balsamic moon for your fall-winter before it kicks in and moves into this new phase. All right. That's the week ahead. Why don't we jump into the September 24th chart? I want to do that just kind of on its own. And I know that I have some charts here that are here that are mixed and matched up because I put them in the mixed and matched up category. But so let me go in here. Let me grab a pristine September 24th chart. How you doing, Jasper? He's all glassy-eyed. Here we go. All right, so this is what we're looking at. And I used good old Washington, D.C. for the September 24th chart. So to the best of my ability, let's break it down. This is one of those charts when I heard that German chancellor talk about wherever you are September 24th, you're going to remember where you were. And that thing just took off like wildfire. It was totally viral. And what's interesting about Germany, and I got into this when we went into the Jupiter return for World War II. This was a couple weeks back. And it was like, okay, something's going on with Germany. Germany as it relates to Russia, as it relates to the starting point, Poland, World War II. The Poles came out, said they wanted reparations. The Germans told them to go fuck themselves. The Pope said we were in World War III, right, which is another chapter in these three great wars. So that was a really, really interesting time. And then Russia shut down the pipeline. It was the Nord Stream. They shut down that pipeline. Basically said, look, you got to you got to stop these sanctions. You stop the sanctions, we'll turn the switch back on. What did Germany do? They doubled down and they froze Russia's sanctions. They froze Russia's assets. This was this last week. So whatever assets, and there were plenty of assets, trust me, because Germany's been buying gas, fuel, right, from Russia. Which means that theoretically, they have money for them, rubles, because Russia wanted to be paid in rubles now. Germany's like just saying, hey, screw you. So if you're Russia, now you're dealing, this is all World War II shit. This is World War II shit. This is World War I shit. This is what's going on right now. And this is the prelude to the 24th of September. This is the prelude. Been trying to figure out, how does this play out? Are we talking nukes? Are we talking like, a massive EMP shutting down large swaths of the Western world? I mean, all these things. It's like now everybody's talking about this. And I don't really want to give it energy, but unless we talk about it, we can't really talk about it. Does that make sense? And we have to, because normally when we have these things, we try to dispel them by being focused, taking these things apart, looking at them and reassembling them. You know, we look at it from that perspective, and hopefully these things are brought to light and we avert something. And I feel like 2 weeks ago, when we were on that full moon in Pisces, something was averted. I was just feeling fucking heavy with that full moon in Pisces. It was on that Saturday. And it was like, and that extended out to Monday. And on Monday, I felt this deep sense of melancholy that was shared by a bunch of other people. Like, what happened? Did something happen on Saturday on the full moon? It was 2 weeks ago, not this Saturday, but the previous Saturday, that we were not aware of. Did something happen? Or did something happen and then it manifested itself in a ripple off the timeline? Right? Like, it's like, did we experience an event that didn't happen? I know that sounds fucking crazy, but that's kind of what it felt like. I can't explain it any other way. Or was what happened on that weekend going to manifest here? Because this is about as balsamic as it gets with that moon at 16 Virgo. So did something occur when the moon was on the other side of the chart over here in the conjunction with Neptune? So we couldn't really see it, right? We couldn't see the effects of this thing. And that 2 weeks later, this time release of this event literally is upon us. That's quite possible. There's this delayed reaction to something that's already occurred and that we don't really know it yet, but we've already felt it. Does that make sense? So when I saw this chart, I'm like, ooh, I'm not crazy about this chart. So first of all, we have Sun Libra 1. And that's on the 24th right there, Washington, D.C. High noon, Sun Libra 1. Sun Libra, I like it, right? Not bad. I like Libra. Friendly sign, pretty sign. It's where my moon, Mercury, and Venus are. I dig Libra. Like October, I've always liked October. But what's behind the sun is cause for concern. We have Mercury at 28, Virgo, retrograde. So it's in Libra now, and we can look at it from a Libran perspective. But when it gets into Virgo, it's like it's critical, right? It's a critical Mercury, and Mercury passes from being in front of the sun to behind the sun. So there are things happening behind the scenes that we can't see on this day. We can't see it. Then we get Venus in Virgo, which is in its fall. Am I right about that? Detriment. It's in its detriment. Venus in Virgo, detriment. Venus in Virgo is incredibly picky. Really picky, critical, judgmental. It's a perfectionist to a fault in a lot of ways. Like if you have an employee who has Venus in Virgo, like just put them in charge of quality control. They may not get along with everybody. They may not get along with everybody, but they'll make sure that shit adds up, right? Because that's what Venus in Virgo does. It adds up. If you have Venus in Virgo in your chart, it's like, it's chaste. It's virginal. But Virgo is one of those signs that is powerfully sensual in a lot of ways. And that's kind of unlocking the key to Venus and Virgo. If somebody is male or female, it doesn't matter. You have Venus and Virgo, you unlock the key with that. It's like, it can be really it's like all this sensuality and all this passion comes out, because generally in Venus and Virgo, it's very reserved and held in check. But once those legs are uncrossed, look out. That's a big deal. But then we have this moon now. So Venus and Virgo, Mercury retrograde, also in Virgo, that weird 28th degree. And then there's the moon in Virgo. It's balsamic, it's critical, and everything is behind the sun, right? So everything on the one hand kind of looks okay, but what's going on behind the scenes is critical. I mean, that is the key word with Virgo. And then we get into these oppositions, right? So now we get into the opposition here with Neptune and Jupiter, mostly Neptune. This is the one that I'm really interested in, because we have all three of these luminaries in opposition with Neptune and in Pisces. And everything is hidden and occulted behind the sun. None of this is out front. Mercury's taking a trip back. The moon is definitely balsamic, dissipative. And what we see here with Neptune is not the full story. It's a projection. It's a total projection. This energy creeps me out. What did I put for the newsletter? I mean, let me. We have this newsletter that we're working on now, and I have a description for this that I came up with. Where's my text? Let me find it. Oh, here it is. No, that's not it. That's different. Oh, here it is. This is. I'll read this to you here. Libra season begins with edgy buzz crackling out of the modems and routers that are transfer ports of the global brain. Chaos theory begins with a German speaker ominously warning silent onlookers and the rest of the planet that September 24th will be a day that everyone will remember, where they were echoing other heavy tones and times. Kennedy, Diana, and 9/11. What's happening with this day astrologically? And are there events in history that can give us some insight into what might happen? This is the chart, which you're looking at. I've used Washington, D.C. as the epicenter for the 924 chart. As most of you are well aware, this is the turning of the season, and we in the Northern Hemisphere get closer to the dark. Retrograde is heavily featured in this chart with Mercury, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Chiron, all in retrograde motion. The energies seem to be torquing away from the center, Terra, on both sides of the solar plane. The geocosmic effect is one of considerable tension. That's the opposition, since the outer planets tend to reflect institutions and collective energy. Are we looking at reversal of fortunes, the unwinding of gains that have been accrued over the last 70 years in post-war America? Sitting behind the sun, we see again a retrograde Mercury in Virgo, Venus in Virgo, the Balsamic Moon also in Virgo. This moon is dissipative. There must be some form of release and letting go. Here in Virgo, the emotional need for perfectionism, for perfection, in order has to be surrendered. There's no holding on. All four luminaries, Sun, Merc, Venus, Moon, are opposed to Neptune in Pisces. This transit aspect brings a bottoming out effect with it. Neptune is like a whirling vortex and drains planets of their life force, spent and rendered inert when in opposition. Since the majority of these planets are in Virgo, which is about holding on to things like logic and reason, right out of the gate, this is not a good sign. Worst case scenario is the complete abandonment of reason and the descent into a type of madness and heightened social frenzy, where people are looking squarely for blame. This is what was going on today with this whole Trey Lance thing. Like, let's blame Kyle Shanahan. Let's fucking tar and feather him. You know, let's string him up. This is like already you can feel this blame energy. It's already circulating. This is the hunt for scapegoats. The best case scenario is that we tell ourselves it's not that bad. And it's better to find some balance, Libra 1, than watching everything be drained away. With Venus in its fall and the normally logical, if critical, moon in Virgo in this mix, even the stoic might find cause to weep. This is just for starters, as Jupiter makes it all bigger, expanding its influence. And as we've seen with this Jupiter retrograde in Aries, the martial threats, Jupiter reverse looks inward. Hold on. No, I take that back. My bad. As we've seen with this Jupiter retrograde in Aries, the martial threat, the martial forces, my bad, of law enforcement have been reversed. Instead of protection and security looking outward at potential challenges and threats, Jupiter reverse looks inward. The violent forces that threaten sanctity are no longer out there, but in here. This has been what's on the table since Biden's speech announcing that the greatest threat to our security is the MAGA Republicans. And this is just for starters. So let me go back there, right? The Jupiter retrograde in Aries. So when Jupiter is in Aries, we're dealing with the expansion of threat or the expansion of violence or the expansion of martial action. So when it's direct, it's like moving outward and pushing out. When it's retrograde, it's moving inward. And this is exactly what's happened. You know, when Biden was doing his, you know, hey, right, that thing. That's a Jupiter retrograde in Aries. And that's in the mix here. It's all part of that opposition, right? I try to pump brakes on the doom, even when I try to pump the brakes on doom, even with the grand Earth trine. There's so much tension in this chart. Mars and Gemini squaring the moon, and Venus is frustration, anger, and conflict. Let me read that again. Mars and Gemini squaring the moon and Venus is frustration, anger, and conflict. Gemini is a sign that is noted for pushing buttons to get a reaction. But this is more than that. This is an invocation of provocation. Then we have Saturn squaring Uranus. Uranus wants to tear it all down, while Saturn wants to impose more order on top of a situation that is rapidly accelerating out of control. Cooler heads might prevail with all that Virgo and the balance of newly anointed Libra, but that's asking a lot from a chart filled with so much tension and the draining of resources. Clearly, there's something in the air on this day. We'll see it soon enough. So there's some very interesting days, very interesting events that happened historically on 9/24. So I've put down a few of them here. In 1745, so this is September 24th in 1745, you have a Jacobite uprising. Prince Bonnie Charles, which is interesting because we now have what? The spotlight on Prince Charles, who still, by the way, I don't believe is a king yet. I don't think he's taken the king thing yet. They're still dealing with the aftermath of the May Queen, who everybody thinks is a double, and I think that's probably true, passing away. But it's interesting, right, that on September 24th, 1745, the Jacobite uprising, Prince Charles, Bonnie Prince Charles, beats the British government army in the Battle of Prestonpans or Prestonpans, however you say that. Very interesting. So the Jacobites are they're early socialists. And Jacobites and Jacobinism spreads throughout Europe and eventually winds up in Paris, in France, where they have the French Revolution and they start chopping the heads off of the French elite. That's all part of it, right? So this is the Jacobite uprising, the 1745. This is when all this stuff starts on 9/24. 1789, this is a very interesting day. The United States Congress passes the Judiciary Act, creating the office of the Attorney General and federal judiciary system and ordering composition of the Supreme Court. So this is a day that would feature, guess who? Merrick Garland. Right? This is the day that the Attorney General is like created out of thin air. There was no Attorney General prior to 1789. Then they come up with the composition of the court, which is very Libran, by the way. Now, this is very interesting. In 1869, you have Black Friday. Now, the 24th is on a Saturday, but we're really moving into this energy on Friday. So on Black Friday, 1869, gold prices plummet after United States President Grant orders the Treasury to sell large quantities of gold after Jay Gould and James Fisk plot to control the market. Oh, isn't that interesting? So there are these machinations where these two characters, Jay Gould and James Fisk, decide that they're gonna run on all the gold. They're gonna take it. And so Grant says, sell it, devalue it, put more of it into the marketplace so that they can't buy it all. Throws everything into what? It's like Neptune bottoming everything out. All those resources. Gold was at one price prior, and then it was like way down here because it was ubiquitous. So Gould and Fisk could not corner the market. And then I thought that this was pretty interesting too. This covers the extraterrestrial angle of 9/24. 1906, Teddy Roosevelt proclaims Devil's Tower, which is where they had Close Encounters of the Third Kind, right? Proclaims Devil's Tower in Wyoming as the nation's first national monument. I thought that was an interesting name for basically a giant fossilized tree stump. Devil's Tower. So it invokes the Devil card and the Tower card in the major arcana. So those are four. There are other days that I thought were kind of interesting for September 24th, but to me, those were the big ones. You know, the beginning of the Jacobite uprising, which eventually will spread to Europe and ultimately will wind up being, you know, the thing that renders the French aristocracy inert. Marx does his own version of this. You know, we eventually catch up to it in the revolutions, which happened 100 years later in 1848. Big time. The revolutions of Europe. It all starts in 1745 with the Jacobite uprising. We have and then we have Prince Charles, right, who beats the British government. Oh, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? Huh. Bonnie Prince Charles. And then we have the Judiciary Act, the Office of Attorney General, a very Libra thing. It's created, and the composition of the Supreme Court takes shape. Lots of interesting things. So here we go. The final thing is historically, 9/24 is connected to uprisings, the establishment of order, and economic collapse. That's a historical rendering of 9/24. Right? It's right there. We do have a grand trine going on. I got to pay some attention to the grand trine, and it's in Earth. So, but it's interesting too, right? It's almost as if how do I say this? I don't think people get the benefit of this grand trine. And I know that sounds like looking for a scapegoat or trying to blame somebody or a heresy, but I feel like people don't get the benefit of this because we have Pluto in Capricorn, which is retrograde, the true node, Uranus in Taurus, and then we go all the way over to the other side of the chart, and it's Mercury and Venus, and it's like, it's almost as if the energy has to do with capitalization through loss. That's what it feels like to me. I don't like this chart. I got to say, I'm not a big fan of this chart. Now, it could all blow through and be like, oh, okay. Whew. Dodge another one, right? Dodge another one. But if there is a day where I think things could tilt and really, you know, with this opposition, just go south, this day is a pretty high candidate. Now, we also have this inconjunct, this yod with the moon. We have Saturn here. Over here, we have Uranus. And then, I take that back, Chiron. Chiron, Aries 14, in conjuncting with the moon and Saturn. We've got the sextile, which makes the yod, right? It's like, There's nothing left in that moon. It's critical. There are, seems to me like externalized or maybe institutional forces that profit off of something here. I'm not crazy about it. I mean, to me, it almost feels like it's an excuse to establish order. That's what it feels like, especially when you bring Pluto and Chiron in. I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy about this chart. And normally with a grand trine, it's like, yeah, cool, no problem. But all those planets are behind the sun. They're all behind the sun. They're all hidden. They're all occulted. They're all occluded. And you got the retrograde and that harsh Venus in Virgo, and the retrograde's at 28. And you got the moon in Virgo. This is not good. You got the square to Mars, which is edgy and triggering, and Mars Neptune square. Again, it's like you can't really clearly see what's going on, right? It's like that's big scapegoat energy. Like if you were going to tell the biggest lie there is, this would be a day to do it. This would be a day to do it. All right. Here, let me just go back. And I don't mean to be a bit of a downer here, but I also have to, be straight. What can you do with a chart like this? Well, get into some Neptune. Get into some Neptune. And if you pray, you may want to start praying. You may want to pray that any crisis on the horizon is averted so that it damages the least amount of people and lives possible. We don't always have to live through suffering and pain. We don't have to learn through it. We could get a little boost of grace here potentially. So why not? Why not? If we're going to go through something, we'll go through it, but pray that the effects of it are minor, and that we can live with the consequences and get better from it. In the meantime, buy some candles. All right, let's get into some other stuff here that is related to this day. So I ran across this last week, and this is really weird. We're starting to get into some very strange territory, boys and girls. We're starting to get into apocryphal territory. This is kind of like Revelation end time talk here, which I don't normally indulge in, but things are strangely lining up. So apparently about a week ago, 4 red heifers We're not red cats. He's getting ready to get up. You don't have to go. It's about cows, not cats. Okay, you can stay. 4 red heifers were delivered to Israel. Why is this important? Because it plays a role in prophecy. Now remember, Rosh Hashana to Yom Kippur is coming and starts on the 24th. So this is a big, big time for our friends over there in the Middle East, right? The Fertile Crescent. It's a big time, not just there, but, starting September 24th to Yom Kippur, it is the time of atonement. The time of atonement, and it is the beginning of the new calendar year, right? The new Jerusalem calendar year. Oh, yeah, I know. Or the Jewish New Year, not the New Jerusalem calendar, Jewish New Year. So that period is a day of atonement. Like, it's like, okay, well, I was kind of an asshole this year. So I apologize for that. Yeah. However, don't hold against me in the coming year, because there's a pretty good chance I might be an asshole again. Yeah, that's right. I don't think you've ever been an asshole. No, you've never been an asshole. No. I've met cats that are assholes. You've never been an asshole. Never. Not once in your life. Not once in your life. So that's what's going on, right? Now they've got these 4 red heifers, which are a part of the prophecy that relates to the building of the 3rd temple. They've got them now. Oh, man, they are elated. And what are they? There's not a single. By the way, they've been doing this for a while. I've been trying. Let me show you how long they've been doing this. So I'm going to show you this is where we're going to go eventually. But before we go there, we're going to go here. And this is from Frontline. I don't have a date on this. I wish I had a date or a timestamp. Reprinted. Let me show you this. Frontline, of course, is PBS. So we could go back to 1989. I'll read you a couple of the paragraphs here. In the spring of 1989, a Pentecostal preacher named Clyde Lott was thumbing through the Bible, looking up all the references to cows. This wasn't so odd, given that Lott is one of the leading cattle breeders in the Southeast. At the time, he specialized in raising show cattle for youngsters involved in 4-H clubs and the Future Farmers of America. His office in Canton, Mississippi, contains many ribbons, plaques, and trophies, including awards for 2 national championships in judging and showmanship. As it happens, the Old Testament is full of references to cows and cattle. It is, after all, a history of an agricultural people. When Lot turned to Numbers 19, he read one of the many conversations that God had with Moses and his brother Aaron as they led the Jews through the desert toward the promised land. Speak unto the children of Israel, Lord commanded, that they bring thee a red heifer without a spot, wherein is no blemish, upon which never came a yoke. The cow will be given to a priest to slay, the Lord continued, and burned on a pyre of cedar, hyssop, and a strand of scarlet thread. Then the ashes of the heifer will be mixed with water and used to purify those who have been exposed to death. Anyone who fails to be purified should be cut off from among the congregation, because he hath defiled the sanctuary of the Lord. Now, of course, Yeshua comes along, basically says, you know what? We're not doing that anymore. There's a new sacrifice in town, and it's not a red heifer. It's me. And we're done with that. Right? This is one of the most mysterious injunctions in the Bible. Even King Solomon, who was said to understand the meaning of these things, could not explain the reason for the red heifer, Clyde Lott didn't understand it either. He also wondered where the children of Israel could have obtained a red cow. From his own reading, he had concluded that the Old Testament was descended from the cattle that Jacob, the son of Isaac, had received in wages from Uncle Laban. Those animals, as described in the King James Bible, were speckled, spotted, and brown. Your speckled and spotted cattle basically are recognized as a purebred cow, like a Holstein, Lott says. So where did the spotless red heifer come from? Genetically, it didn't add up. And yet the Lord had specified that this was the only way for the Israelites to cleanse themselves and participate in the worship of God. I didn't realize then that God always sent to Israel at the time she needed it, the man with the red heifer. Lot, who is 42, is a soft-spoken Southern gentleman, squarely built with a full fleshy face. Sounds like a Taurus to me. And curly brown hair that is beginning to gray. Although he's ordained in the ministry of the National Pentecostal Assemblies of Jesus Christ, he does not pastor his own church. I would fit more in the category of evangelist, going on the road and preaching or teaching. He says, like all fundamentalist Christians, Lot believes that the Messiah will come again. His view of the end time is that Jesus will return. Return will usher in 1,000 years of peace and harmony. Before that, however, there'll be 7 years of tribulation. The Antichrist will appear, and the forces of good and evil will wage a cataclysmic struggle, culminating in Jesus' defeat of the false Messiah. Many evangelicals believe that Jews and other non-Christians will suffer for accepting the Antichrist as their Messiah, that most of them will perish in the coming struggle. But those who survive will finally acknowledge Christ as their Savior. True Christians will be spared these catastrophes because they have been raptured. By the way, this is all from the Cyrus Scofield Bible. This does not occur in the King James Version of the Bible or any other version of the Bible. This is a new retelling of the tale. Let's just keep going here. Snatched directly into heaven before all the troubles begin. They will return to act as priests during Christ's millennial reign. At the end of that time, Satan will rally the forces of evil for one final confrontation with Jesus and the saints of the church at the Battle of Armageddon. The satanic warriors, led by a prince named Gog, will come from the north, from a land called Magog, which Lot believes could be a satellite republic of the former Soviet Union. Now, the land of the north, if you go back far enough and you look into what I call prehistorical, I'm not talking about like prehistorical in terms of Cro-Magnons and Neanderthals, but the prehistorical record of a place like Finland, that was the land of the north. And in Finland, the place of the north where the people from the north were from was a place called Hell. And Hell later became Helsinki. So there are some very interesting etymological and historical twists and turns with our historical record. Just let's put that right there for now, okay? All right. Which Lot believes to be silent former prophet. God will destroy them. Who knows? Maybe Gog is Zelensky. Ukraine. God will destroy them. However, the dead will rise for their day of judgment. That's the Aeon, the judgment card in the major arcana. And a new Jerusalem will descend from the sky. Once again, God will dwell among his people. Okay. So this goes on and on and on and on, right? This keeps going, keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. Here we go. Now it begins to change a little bit. To talk about this guy named Manning here. Let me see if I can find where Manning comes into play. Here we go, right here. Let's get into this. Finally, a qualified red heifer has not been found in Israel in almost 2,000 years. And yet red cattle are not really so unusual to the United States. A breed known as the Red Angus is as red as an Irish setter. It occurred to Lot that God, he believed directed the evangelist's own success in the showing, was now guiding his hand in a much larger matter. I guess he had some kind of prize cow here. Maybe it was red. Where was the red heifer to come from? That was the question we couldn't answer, says Lot, who sometimes uses the first person plural when referring to himself. It plagued us day in and day out for months. Finally, in the latter part of the summer of 1990, as he was baling hay, a piece of equipment broke and he started driving to town to get a spare part. But then he found himself driving to Jackson, the state capital, and walking into the office of Roy D. Manning, the director of international trade for the Mississippi Department of Agriculture and Commerce. I will never forget that day. I'll never forget as long as I live, walking into Mr. Manning's office that day, and just a cold shock on his face of seeing someone coming out of the hayfield, blue jeans, tennis shoes, baseball cap, dirty and smelly, and walking to his office unannounced and saying, I've read the Bible. The Bible says Israel has to have a red heifer, Lot said later in one of many testimonials to evangelical congregations in the South. For some reason, he kicked me out of the office. Instead, Manning wrote a letter to an attaché at the American Embassy in Athens, who was in charge of agricultural exports to the Middle East. He'd been approached by a producer and seller of cattle from the state of Mississippi, and I'm quoting him in the following. Manning wrote, the letter went on, red Angus cattle suitable for the Old Testament biblical sacrifices with no blemish or off-color hair. Genetically red will reproduce red dye. Nose pigmentation will be dark. Heifers at a year old will weigh approximately 600 to 700 pounds. These cattle will adapt quickly to Middle Eastern climate, also excellent beef quality. Manning's letter was bounced to a State Department official who routed it to the American Embassy in Tel Aviv, where it was forwarded to the Israeli Ministry of Religious Affairs. Someone there eventually thought to send it to the Temple Institute, a private organization of religious Jews in Jerusalem who suspect, like Lot, that the end time may be near and are dedicated to rebuilding the temple. The letter arrived on the desk of Rabbi Chaim Richman 90 days after Manning posted it. The Temple Institute operates a small museum in the Jewish quarter of the Old City. Okay, so this thing goes on and on and on. So eventually, this guy Lot is able to produce some red heifers. And then eventually, they wind up inspecting said red heifers because they want to have their temple rebuilt, right? They want to slaughter these red heifers. They need 4, 1 for each wall, by the way. They want to slaughter these red heifers. Then they want to burn them, right? You saw what they were going to burn them with. Then they take their ash and they mix it. I'm not sure if they mix it with the pigment to paint or the actual coating for the wall itself. To be determined. But those red heifers are used to sanctify that building. So these guys come over. This thing goes on and on and on and on and on. And eventually they find a cow, but he's not quite perfect. He's not quite perfect. It's like, it's got a few hairs. So the final paragraph of the story comes down to this. As long as such mythologies are taken literally, the struggle for Jerusalem and the Temple Mount will never end. The religious carnage that has marked every era of this maddened city will continue because whoever controls Jerusalem controls access to the sacred places. It is a way of owning God. Well, boys and girls, apparently the red heifers have arrived. So it says here, I've often said that Jerusalem is the hottest piece of real estate in the entire world. By that, I mean that no other single piece of land attracts so much attention from people of all nations and faiths. Many times that attraction is positive, sometimes it is violent and negative. However, there is a spot inside of Jerusalem that takes the volatility of the holy city to another level, the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is the first and second side of the first and second temples. It is where Titus completed the conquest of Jerusalem. This is where Jesus died, was buried, and rose again, in the place that with the three-phase all claim as holy. You could say that everything that happens in Jerusalem is part of a prophetic journey that will ultimately lead to the Messiah setting his feet on the Mount of Olives and the redemption being enacted. This week, an exciting new development occurred, not in Jerusalem, but at the Ben Gurion Airport in Tel Aviv. That is another step on this redemption process. An incredibly exciting development. I guess it's 5 now. I thought it was 4. 5. I guess they have one for the ceiling. 5 red heifers landed in Israel yesterday. According to rabbis and leaders in the Orthodox community, these heifers could be used to reinstate many of the practices of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. Even before the third temple is rebuilt, Zach Waller, the executive director of our organization, Ha Yovel, was privileged to attend the welcoming ceremony at the airport, along with a group of Christians and Jews, to search for these red heifers, as well as the process of bringing them to Israel has been spearheaded by a Christian Zionist from Texas. That's where the cows come from. They come from Texas. By the way, well, I'll get into this in a little bit. The Orthodox Jewish community was especially welcoming of the fact that those from the nations should indeed be involved in the process of bringing the red heifers to Israel. An astounding view, as this is part of the Jewish journey to restore the temple in Jerusalem. At the welcoming ceremony, the small group witnessed the unloading of heifers, recited blessings of thanksgiving, sang and danced, enjoyed Al Chaim, and even blew the shofar. Right, that's a big part of this 24th and the 10-day festival, right? To celebrate this momentous occasion, as Israel approaches the beginning of the fall feast season, the heightening of good versus evil could not be more strongly felt. They got these cows now. They got these cows. 2,000 years, those who hate Israel have been making very concrete threats to enact riots and violence on the Temple Mount during Rosh Hashana and the rest of the upcoming fall holidays. So this is a big deal. This is a very, very big deal. And apparently they broke out into a wild celebration. Celebration erupts at Ben Gurion as 5 red heifers arrive in Israel. There they are. The 5 red heifers. So guys, I hope they're not thinking of bringing them to the Temple Mount. So this is a big deal. And this is the fulfillment of a type of prophecy. And it's to bring in the Moshiach, which is the Jewish Messiah, right? This is not to bring Muslims and Christians and Jews together. This is not what this is about, okay? This is not about sanctifying the temple so they can bring Christ back. Hey, it's all good. Let's shake hands, hug it out. We're sorry. Sorry that whole thing happened. It's not about that. This is about the consecration of the temple so that the Messiah, the Jewish Messiah, returns. This is a big deal. This is a very, very big deal. And as we're approaching Rosh Hashana and then Yom Kippur, all part of this 10-day period of atonement, now they've got these 5 red heifers, and if they and clearly they've passed the inspection. They wouldn't be there if they hadn't, right? They wouldn't be there. So whoever their boots on the ground were here in Zionist Christian Texas, ably represented by Greg Abbott, not a gray, black, nor white hair on their head, tail, body, underbelly, their belly, their udder. It's not there, or else they wouldn't be there. They've been specifically breeding these red Angus cows specifically for this purpose, and now they're there. So I decided to look at a couple charts. And I wanted to look at Israel's chart as it relates to the chart for the 24th. Now, we've looked at Israel's chart before, and it's an interesting chart on a number of different levels. So why don't we just look at Israel's chart in general. Let me see if I can just find it. Which one is this? Okay, we're going to talk about Prince William and his chart. We'll do it after this. Okay, let me go back into the hard copy, as they say. I hope you're enjoying the show, by the way. Jasper is really leaning into the show tonight. He is really leaning into the show. Let's look at this. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to throw some, well, we're almost there. You'll see the transits for the 24th. So we're looking at Israel, which is May 14th, 1948, 4 p.m. You look at the chart for Israel, this is what you get. So there's some interesting things about this chart. Number one, the sun is in Taurus. Oh, isn't that interesting? Taurus sun. And what are we talking about? What are we talking about, Jasper? We're talking about red heifers. We're talking about cows. We're talking about bulls. In the bull's eye, the sun in Taurus conjunct Algol, which we've talked about before, which is the Medusa head. And guess what? Israel has the true node in Taurus. And guess what we're going to find when we match up the two charts? Pretty psychic. And we have an assemblage of planets here, Mercury and Gemini, Ceres in Gemini, vertex, also in Gemini, conjunction here, 8 degrees, all occulted, all in the 8th house. Dealing with what? Intelligence, secrecy, right? The 8th house is occulted, hidden. Mercury in the 8th house is occulted and hidden. And it's communication, it deals with secrecy. The sun in the 8th house, also dealing in not being seen, right? So what does the world see with Israel? Well, it sees 25 Cancer midheaven, Saturn, Pluto, Moon, all in Leo, all in the 10th house, the sign of leadership, rulership, right? Making a hard scrabble life out of the desert with a Saturn-Pluto conjunction. Right, Jasper? Moon-Pluto conjunction, also very proud, very intense. Remember, we're going to go through that dissipative and dark moon in Leo here, just as we approach the weekend, and it goes into Virgo. And we have conjunct Regulus, Mars in Leo. Guess who else has Mars in Leo? At that degree, one Donald John Trump. So Trump's Mars is conjunct the Mars of Israel. They're in cahoots. They're in cahoots. Some Mars square, that's a square that fights, right? It is a square that fights. If you have a Sun Mars square in your chart, you're a fighter. Pick your fights, pick your battles wisely. I have a Sun Mars square in my chart, and I didn't always pick my fights well. I didn't pick them wisely. Sometimes I got my ass kicked. I was not a big fighter, but as a kid, you got in fights when you were a kid. Sometimes you did okay. So there we go. We got the Trump conjunction, Mars, both conjunct Regulus, right? And Regulus is the king. It regulates the heavens. And this is what we learned last week when Christopher Nolan stopped by. It's kind of a big deal, especially when you have Trump here. And they decided that they were going to name the train station, which is at the Ben Gurion Airport. So the platform for the train. And it's a high-speed train that goes right to the temple, is named after Donald Trump. Isn't that interesting? So now Trump is part of this whole thing. And that's where Trump's Mars is. So that means that Israel's Mars is on Trump's ascendant. Isn't that interesting? And Saturn, Pluto, and the moon, they're all in Trump's 12th house, along with Jared Kushner's true node. So what's going on behind the scenes in Trump's chart? All this. Oh, Trump happens to be a Gemini as well. He also happens to have Venus in Cancer, which is what we see here. Trump is all over this chart. All over it. Trump's midheaven, conjunct Algol. And what do we see there? We see the Israeli sun conjunct Trump's midheaven. Wow. Wow. So one could make a case that there is a very deep and perhaps potentially prophetic connection between Donald Trump and Israel. Now, if you are a Christian Zionist and an evangelical, you just got a boner. You just got a boner. If you're Paula White, your panties just got wet. However, if you're not in that group or you're not in that fold, you're thinking, what is really going on here? What is really going on here? Trump, if we can play this out a little bit, here I can even bring the two charts together. I'll show you. I'll show you what they look like together. Inquiring minds might want to know. So I can do that. Here, let's do this. I have looked at Trump's chart so many fucking times. We'll do synastry. And we're going to do our friends in the Middle East. And let's take a look right here. So you can see it, right? Mars. So Israel's on the outside right there. There the two Marses are together. Rock'em sock'em robots. Moon, Saturn, Pluto. Jared Kushner's true node is right there. Saturn, right? Here's Israel's Venus, Cancer. There's Trump's Venus, Saturn in Cancer, like late degrees. Venus, Uranus, a bit of a wide conjunction, right? There's Uranus on top of Trump's sun. Uranus behind Trump's sun. There's that crazy eclipse, lunar, true node. Here's Jupiter down here, conjuncting the south node in the moon eclipse in Sagittarius. Yep, right there. And then there's Israel's sun right on top of Trump's midheaven. Talking about chickpeas in a pod, right there. These two charts are hand in glove. Hand in glove. Here, I'm sorry I didn't show you. I apologize. Let me just go back over it. Mars, right there. Moon, Pluto, Saturn, Pluto, Jared Kushner's true node is there. There's Israel's Venus. There's Trump's Mercury. We got communication. We have the whole Uranus sandwich with Trump's sun. Here is Israel's sun right on top of Trump's midheaven. That's also where Amy Coney Barrett's true node is. There's Algol. There's Regulus, the regulator. Right? See all that? It's all just snug. Snug as a bug. Here's Jupiter, again, Sagittarius conjunct the galactic center, conjunct Trump's eclipse moon in the south node, with the south node here. This is really a pretty remarkable synastry chart between a leader and a foreign government. Like it's almost a complete match on the overlay. Really interesting stuff. So Trump is a player here. He's a player in this. And remember, he's the guy that said, oh, we're going to move the embassy to Jerusalem. No other president had done that, by the way. No other president. They all just kept kicking the can down the road. But Trump had a lot of pressure from Sheldon Adelson, who spent a lot of money on. By the way, Sheldon Adelson spent a lot of money on Ron DeSantis too. What he did, he helped him get elected governor. So Trump is a player here, right? He is a player in this equation. So let's go forward and let's look at this, which is the September 24th chart. There we go. We move this down just a tad, just a smidge. Anybody use the word smidge? I don't use smidge. I use tad. Here we go. Look at that. So on Saturday, the 24th, Israel is having its nodal return. Now, this has happened before, but it's happening on the beginning of their high holy day. Can you feel me? This is significant. And then we have Uranus here coming in and getting ready to, this won't happen until next year, but it's going to happen. I think the nodal return is really significant in this chart. There is a lot of tension in this chart. Like you can see the oppositions that we've already talked about, like playing out here and here. This is all part of that September 24th chart. Saturn transiting through the 5th house. I mean, a lot of this stuff, it adds to the dynamic tension of what's already going on. You know, Mars is going to conjunct Uranus pretty quickly in this chart. Remember, Mars is cruising through the 8th house here. So by Saturday, it'll be right here on the cusp of the 8th, right there, cusp of the 8th, on the cusp of conjuncting Uranus, which will happen, which tends to be very, explosive, right? So again, you know, Mars returns. They happen every 2 years. But it doesn't happen when the true nodes are conjunct like that. So, or you'd have Mars be in this position 2 years ago, in this position 2 years ago, getting ready to conjunct Uranus 2 years ago, but not here, not with the nodal return. And what sign is it in? It's in Taurus. What is Taurus? It is the bull and the cow. So there we go. Also, red is an interesting color because we associate red with Aries. So when you have the cow clothed in red, as it were, it becomes a symbol of both Aries and Taurus. So you have the ram, and if I'm not mistaken, that is the horn of the shofar, right? That is the ram's horn, and the shofar is blown. And then you have the cow, and then you have the red cow or the red heifer, which is the ram and the cow together. There it is. And look, I'm probably simplifying all of this a lot. I'm sure there's all kinds of rituals and ablutions and prayers and all the things that would go along with an event like this, which I know nothing about, nor do I really have any desire to learn it. But I can tell you right now that this true node conjunction, the nodal return, is significant, especially with Mars here. And then here we have transiting Pluto right on Israel's IC. Boom. Boom. Transforming the very nature of the place. That's what's going on here. So when you get into Pluto, you get into things like purging and cleansing. This is what this whole thing is about. It's a big cleansing ritual so that they can welcome Moshiach, the Messiah. And all this potentially starts on Saturday. So maybe there's a reason why the German chancellor, or whatever this guy was, is talking about this in this way. You throw on top of that what the Germans did to Russia, and they're all just following orders at this point. That's what's happening. They're just following orders and following through. It's like so we're entering into a really, really intense phase. Now, by the grace of God, maybe nothing happens through the attention and prayer in the dispelling of doom, that maybe we have something that was kind of like maybe what happened 2 weeks ago when the moon was full in Pisces and I could feel something. So there's one of two things with that. Like something happened and we weren't aware of it. Three things. Something happened. We weren't aware of it. Something was averted, or the outcome of it is this balsamic moon that shows up this weekend. And I'm not here to spread fear. Like, I'm not into the fear thing at all. But I do think that this is a time where, you know, you need to be spiritually prepared every single day of your life, however you can do that. However you can do that. You need to be spiritually prepared. And because we could be dealing with catastrophe at any given moment now. Part of this has to do with the fact that the social contract is broken. It's just broken, shattered, million pieces. People aren't safe. They have, you know, it's like people are less safe than they were. And I see it all the time. And it's spreading like a cancer. So you have to be prepared for things. It's important. If you can't be, then hey, guess what? You're spiritually, mentally, physically. And by the way, there are people who may not have the latest and greatest like bug out gear or bug in gear or anything like that. But if you're right with God and you're right with who you are and you're right with like the people in your life, you'll be where you need to be whenever that time comes. And when that time does come, you'll be right. You just got to make sure you're right, whatever that is for you. Because there are people that may be completely prepared and they're not in the right place. And I mean, it's like, well, you know, you blew a tire on the way to your bug out bunker and you got ambushed by zombies. Well, hey, were you right with God? You had everything you needed, but shit happens sometimes. Shit happens sometimes. And, you know, the best thing to do is be prepared for the shit happening. Okay, we got a few more charts to roll through. Thanks for being here. I'll be done in about maybe 15, 20 minutes, 20 minutes max. I know it's late for you guys back east, and I apologize for that, but we'll get through it here as quickly as possible. I want to look at Prince William, and he's on the header for tonight. And I may wait a little bit here, only because we're kind of pressed for time. But here's William's chart, and I think William is a player. He's really a player. You know, he was born on the Midsummer Night's Dream with the sun in Cancer at 0 degrees. He's born with the new moon, right? So William is born on an eclipse. So he has a very faded chart. Very, very faded. He has Jupiter on his midheaven at 0 Scorpio, Jupiter, Sun trine, right? Neptune on the midheaven. His ascendant. His ascendant is 27 Sagittarius, which is conjunct the galactic center. This is an incredibly faded chart in a lot of ways. He has Mercury conjunct Algol. I'm sorry, not Algol, Aldebaran, which is that is a battle. Like, I think Prince William is here to lead Europe in battle. He's here to lead a standing army. And I see that with the conjunction of Mercury and Aldebaran. So things are happening in his chart. The thing that's really happened in his chart is his progress chart, which I wanted to bring up. I think William I think William is going to be the king. If Charles is the king, he's not going to be king for very long. He hasn't done the king thing yet. Be ready for the Mars retrograde. It will retrograde back, and I believe it retrogrades to 9 degrees. So it'll come back and move into conjunction with William's Mercury, and it goes forward next year. I think that's significant in this chart. Even tonight, look, we're talking about his moon, and we have the Cancer moon conjunct his Cancer. It's conjunct. So we're onto something here in his chart, right? With this chart. That's a tell, by the way. So I was looking at Prince William's progress chart, and I found something very interesting about his progress chart. And he's a progressed Leo, which is the sign of the king. Right there. Right there. His progressed ascendant is Aquarius. Saturn is retrograding. It goes back to 19, conjuncts his progressed ascendant by 3 degrees. So now he, and has been since 2014, in the circle of leadership, right, with Leo here. And next year it moves into the second decan, which is the Sagittarian decan, which also has religious significance. He also has Chiron conjunct Algol. Look at that. And he has this yod with Chiron. You know, he suffered an injury with they say it was a golf club over his left eye when he was 6 years old. And that's, again, theoretically one of the signs of the Antichrist, that the individual would suffer an injury to the head when they're young. Now, who knows? Maybe it's all cosmetic, but I think it's pretty interesting. And so I was looking back in time, and I wanted to see what happened in 2014 when William's sun went into progressed Leo. And I came across a really interesting event, or a sequence of events. So when William and his progressed sun moves into Leo, what does he do? He makes a trip to the United States. So this is in 2014. He makes a trip to the United States. And what does he do here? Well, he does a number of things. He goes to Wall Street. That's kind of a big deal. And he eventually winds up going to what? The UN. He hangs out with Barack Obama. He went to a basketball game. So this is kind of a big deal. And Obama is a Leo. So he's having a meeting, theoretically, with the king at that time. They go to the first NBA game. So this is a very interesting development in the life of William. He comes to the U.S. He comes to the U.S. and he comes to Wall Street. So let me play the Wall Street video. He goes to the World Bank. My bad, not Wall Street. He goes to the World Bank. He's at the World fucking Bank. And then on December 8th, 2014, him and Jim Kim make a speech and say that the world needs an international approach. None of this is by accident. None of it. So I'll play you this video. It's like one of the fucking Beatles goes to America. I'll play this for you. Listen to the shrieks and the gasps and the delight of William and his presence, and the young teeny boppers just can't wait to get a little piece of him, touch him. Here we go.
Oh, I got this. iPads, iPhones, iPads. Shoot his legs.
I don't see anything.
I see. Well, there he is. He's in a red tent. He's surrounded by.
So the same kind of vibe hold up in 2022 in a world where we've been conditioned to respond like Pavlov's dogs to the ringing bell of critical race theory and privilege. Will William Starr still shine as bright in 2022? My guess is yes. Not that I'm here to polish a star. Trust me, I'm not. But that's significant. Remember, his sun had just progressed into Leo. It's at Leo 1. He's there in December, which is the season of Sagittarius, where his sun is now moving into in the next decan, right? And it's also connected to his ascendant, which is connected to the galactic center. That's a very important trip. They're telling you what is going to take place. He's at the World Bank and he's at the UN. And he's hanging out with Jay-Z at a Nets game. I don't know if Jay-Z was he involved at that point? I think it might have been Bruce. What's his name? Still the old owner. Anyway. I think that's it for tonight. It's late. You guys back east, it's 11:30. I'd love to do Nile Rodgers' chart. Just trust me, he's cool. He's got a great chart. He's a Virgo with some Libra scattered in there, and I think the guy's great. Super talented, awesome, great attitude. We need more Nile Rodgers in the world, as far as I'm concerned. As far as I know. I mean, it's like every other day now. It's like, well, did you know so-and-so? Yeah. He eats kids. He's a kid eater. It's like, fuck, did I need to know that? I mean, at this point, I really don't. I mean, I do care, but I really don't care. But now, Rogers, I dig you, man. I dig you. You're a good Virgo. I'd love to interview him one of these days. That'd be cool. Thanks for being here. We went on a pretty long journey tonight. And I hope you found it helpful, entertaining, maybe enlightening. I do have an astrology course. If you're interested in astrology, that's over on my website. You can grab that. I do readings, and I'm really looking forward to hooking up with people here in October, where we're going to have David, the Leo King Palmer, as part of our October celebration. We got a lot of really cool stuff planned out for it. Tomorrow we're doing an on-site, and we're gonna start to work the magic. All right, use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to set what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix, and for myself and Jasper, the astrological cat, we wish you nothing but the best and blessed week.